I'm back from Morrison, Illinois. I got my highlights sent to WQAD. Mitch, you've been around scouring the internet for scores, for stats. You were watching games last night and today. I was
hmm
out on the sidelines. So let's get into it. Let's get into the instant reacts for round one, the first round of the IHSA playoffs. Overall, Mitch, what are your thoughts? How are we doing here?
Let me do this. I'm going to turn the tables, Greg, because I want to ask you
Okay.
because I'm jealous. Um, Not because you went to Morrison, but because you were on the field on a sunny day in late October watching high school football in Illinois. So I'm going to ask you how your day was back in the playoff fold this year.
Oh, I did. It felt great. So the what's become the annual tradition. So I'm going out Friday nights, usually on my own because I'm, leaving work and then getting to WQAD and then going out to a game. But on the Saturdays in the playoff time, I'm usually leaving from my house. So I'm taking my oldest son with me. So that's been the last 3 years. I think he's gone with me. So he did again today. And it was picture perfect as I sent out the tweet in Morrison. Sun was out, beautiful. I mean, if you're gonna be picky, it's a little cold, but I mean it's October, so what do you expect? It's late October. What do you
Mhm.
expect? But man, it was beautiful. And Mitch, you texted me early on, like, what's the crowd like? What's it like there? And I've been to a lot of games at Morrison, and that place is usually bringing a good crowd. There's usually a good fan contingent from both teams, depending on who they're playing. Usually it's a good
Yeah.
crowd there either way. And today, even my son, who's never been there, pointed out, Dad, that's a big set of bleachers and it's packed. There's nowhere else to sit in there. And he's right. That the whole, if anyone, most people who are familiar with Morrison, that whole bleachers section was filled. And then you
Mhm.
start looking down the sidelines that go from end zone to end zone, and it was at least two or three people deep, almost the whole stretch of the field. So, Mitch, you've been to a lot of games at Morrison. You've seen a lot there. That's a packed crowd at Morrison.
Yeah, I've been a part of one or two games that are like that. So that was expected to get that rivalry game with Fulton in a playoff setting. So yeah, we expected a big crowd there, and yeah, I think it was a little warmer than maybe we thought it would be. But that sun shining on that field looked
Yep.
great. Great job by everyone at Morrison. But the area itself lucked out with weather. It looked like we had a couple teams that played tonight that it was overcast, a couple games that were rainy, but that's what you expect in the first round of playoffs. So this was a great couple days as we get round one here under wraps. Got a lot of teams moving on. We do bid farewell to a couple teams that we really enjoyed covering this year. Had tough round one matchups. And we get a lot of rematches in the second round. So yeah, everything not too much. I don't think that we didn't expect. Um, at least not with our area team. Some other things that happened in the state that we'll talk about that surprised us. Some cool upsets and whatnot. So, but for the most part, it's been a great 2 days. Love that we're back in playoff mode and getting ready here to talk to you about it and move forward.
Yeah, I was gonna say, for the most part, the results we saw were kind of what we expected. There was one game in particular that stands out that I think was maybe a little surprising. But yeah, certainly a couple games here that we say farewell, like you said, to some teams that we really enjoyed this year. We'll start on Friday and then move our way into Saturday. So,
Yep.
Mitch, you had your eyes on a lot of games on Friday night. We'll start with what you have listed here in the notes. Forreston in Class 1A gets the 20-7 win over Ottawa Marquette. I will say that, for we've talked about Forreston this year and not really being able to pull away from teams, not really being able to dominate teams. I wondered if this was a game where they might do that. And again, it was close. They win 20-7. I think it was a comfortable win, but they were up 13-7 at half. They get a touchdown right at the beginning of the second half. And that was it. That was the end of the scoring. 27 final. So they get the win. They move along, but again, not a big score that stands out to us necessarily.
Yeah, this is a well fought, hard hitting football game between two really good programs. And what you had just mentioned is kind of what we said about Forreston all year, right? That they don't have those results this year that they might have had in the past where they pull away from games. But at the end of the day, their identity is still the same. They control the clock, they run the ball really well, and their defense plays hard. So, and that's exactly what happened in this one. That they won the turnover battle 4-0. It's something that Coach Janicki kind of joked about a little bit, that they had 3 fumble recoveries, but he says we didn't even cause them. They were giveaways. And this is the quote that he gave to
That's
Andy Colbert
interesting.
about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, a quote that he gave in an interview to Andy Colbert from Shaw Local after the game. But all the guys that we mentioned for this force and attack, Mulder, Nelson, Sanders, they combined for 316 rushing yards. So, when you do that, you're going to limit your opposition's ability to have the ball to sustain drives. And again, with that defense, whether they force turnovers or not, they get the ball back. So, yeah, a hard fought win for Forreston here. Tough loss for Ottawa Marquette, but Forreston's the one who moves on here.
Yeah. Let's jump a little ahead. We'll talk a little bit about Forreston's next opponent, Lena Winslow. So Lena Winslow gets the win today, 50-13 against Rockford Lutheran. So Rockford Lutheran returns the opening kickoff, and I was on the sidelines with Kyle Kampmeyer from NUICfootball.com, and Kyle looked at me and said, "Hey, Rockford Lutheran is up, well, I don't know, 6-0, 7-0."
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, wow." And he goes, "It won't last." And he,
I said that will be the only time they score, and I was
almost right. Almost right. So they return the kickoff, but from there, it was all Lena Winslow. Gage Dunker at 190 yards, 5 touchdowns. He sits now 1 touchdown away from the all-time NUIC rushing touchdown record of 67. So an impressive career for Gage Dunker. And he's, on the doorstep of a little bit more history there. So quickly, we'll talk about this now Forreston Lena Winslow rematch. I think, immediately when I look at it, you talk about they just played in week 9 and Lena Winslow won 36-8. If there's a way that Forreston's going to win this game, I think based on what we've seen this year, it's got to be one of those grounded out, ugly type, I say ugly type of games, but what I mean is I think like they got to control the clock and they got to just really do a masterful job of keeping the ball in their hands, getting a few turnovers, and right, that's got to be what it takes, right? You tell me.
The problem with that is that's exactly what Lena Winslow is going to do to them.
I know that's true.
They do it better, right? Like,
well,
and
but
it's not a shot at Forreston, but that is Lena's MO, and they're just better at it. That's the thing.
Forreston has done that before against Lena to get wins.
Different teams, sure.
Well, sure.
It certainly can happen. Not saying that it can't.
Yes.
But yeah, it would take a heck of an effort to beat them at their own game, is what I would say.
Yeah, that's fair. That's true. All right, well, we'll talk more about that Forreston Lena Winslow matchup in our regular episode coming out Tuesday morning. But let's jump.
We'll have to go with Kyle to get he'll have all the historical figures, because this is not the first time, it's not the second time, it's not the third time they've ever met each other in the playoffs. So yeah, we'll get the full history here and cumulative wins and losses, because there's a lot of history between those two teams in the playoffs.
He's got it at the ready. He's listening to this right now, and he's already got it ready to send. So,
yep.
All right. Well, couple other games from Friday night. We'll go to the LLC. The small school division had a rematch between Stark County and Princeville. Stark County, the number 2 seed, gets the win 34-20 over Princeville. But Mitch, this, you read that score and it wasn't so easy for the Rebels here. Prince's led 12-0 early, but Stark County scored 22 in the final 13 minutes to pull away. They really did a great job at the end of this game to come up with some clutch plays on defense and that leading to clutch plays on offense. So they come away with the win here. And, sometimes it's not a big win, but a clutch, a game where you have to kind of deliver in those tight spots can be very important moving down the way. So they move into the second round here.
Yeah, and a lot of pressure too, right? An undefeated team here, um, going up against a stingy Princeville team, which we know that they are always a team that's going to hang around. They did it all year. They get into the playoffs that way. So yeah, early on, I think I did the googly eyes tweet when they went up 12-0, and it was just like, okay, what can the Rebels do here? And sure enough, shortly after that, I think they went up 14-12, and um, again pulled away in the last quarter and a half or so. So yeah, a good win at home for Stark County. They move on, and they will face a very familiar opponent in Rover Williams Field in round two.
Well, again, we said we're going to talk in order of Friday to Saturday, but let's jump ahead and talk about Rova Williamsfield here. They're the 10 seed. They get the win 28-14 over the 7 seed Sterling Newman. Great win for Rova Williamsfield. Great win for Grant Goldstrand in that program. Spencer Brown, 4 touchdowns in this game. Now, Mitch, we joked a few weeks ago that we started the podcast one night and went through the list of names that scored for Rova Williamsfield and did not have Spencer Brown's first name. Well, we certainly know it now. We've learned it now, and we certainly have it, in our notes this week. 4 touchdowns. Great effort by him. Great effort from this Cougar team all the way around to defeat a good Newman program.
My Cougars, Greg, you know it. My
Yeah,
Cougars here.
that's right.
This is a great win for the Cougars. This was a game that we both agreed that was one matchup that we were most excited for, and I don't know that it went not in terms of who won and who lost, just the way that the game went. I don't think it went the way we thought it might have. Um, it started out pretty crazy. It bad kind of bad memories for Newman because it's the exact same way the Kiwanee game started. The very first play of the game is a high snap out of shotgun. It's a high snap, and Rover Williamsfield recovered on the 27 and scored just a couple plays later. And just like that, they're leading the game, and Newman has to play from behind. So just back and forth between these two teams early on, but that really good Cougar defense, they shut out Newman in the second half. I think they held Newman to net 20 yards. So, I mean, how often
Wow.
do you
Yeah.
see that against a Newman team? And a Newman team which again, we've always kind of talked about their offense, but they've shown really good signs, and their rushing attack has always been fine. So, great win here for Robert Williamsfield. They looked great doing it, all white on the road, Greg.
Yeah, that's good stuff there. In texting back and forth with head coach Grant Goldstrand, he really, he called out that this was their best team game in all 3 phases. So I think that's a huge sign. If you get to the postseason, if you're playing in week 10 and you can say, this is the best we've played all year, that's a great sign for any program. So
Mhm.
for Rova Williamsfield, that's great for them. He mentioned defensively, they tackled well, and defensive line was a force tonight or this afternoon. So, when you start talking about, that defensive effort and really being able to slow down this Newman team, who, they're defensively really good, but I guess, being able to get the job done overall, great effort by Rova Williamsfield. Now, Mitch, what drives me nuts about this 1 through 16, this, North and South bracket is that here we go again. Rova Williamsfield and now Stark County have to meet up as conference rivals in the second round.
Right. Yeah, we're gonna get a lot of that, right? We just talked about Lena and Forston.
Yep,
That
exactly.
you know maybe not this year, but in years past, that could have very well been a state championship game. It could have very well been a semifinal game, but we're getting these matchups early on. And again, you hate to see it, but to, you know, Jim Taylor's point, we wouldn't get these matchups all the time either if there was a 1 through 32. So I understand that aspect of it. It's going to be fun, right? This is going to be a great rematch. This was only, I think it was a 24-14 Stark County win
Yep.
in week 6. This will be a really fun game. And so that's the two sides of the coin. Do you want to see it or do you potentially not want to see it? Um, so we get to see it, but yeah, like you said, would love to see this in the third round, the quarterfinals, or in the semifinals, something like, down the road rather than the second round. But either way, it's going to be a lot of fun. Two really good teams that got really good wins this week.
Yep. All right, we're gonna bounce back into Friday night. Let's talk about a couple games in. Well, let's see. Well, I guess one game in Class 3A, then we'll get into Class 4A briefly here. Monmouth Roseville gets the win 35-14 over North Boone. So Tyler Finicum, 3 touchdowns. Finicum, Myers, and Thompson combined for nearly 300 yards on the ground. So great job by this Monmouth Roseville Titans team. Mitch, we talked a lot about in the last podcast that, North Boone coming out of the Big Northern, that's a battle-tested conference. There's a lot of good teams in that conference. And Monmouth Roseville kind of, led the entire time, controlled this game, and gets the win.
Yeah, you talk about battle tested, and we talked about it on the preview that Monmouth Roseville has 4 losses, and they're all to 8-1 teams. So they certainly know a thing or two about being battle tested too. And I think it showed here going on the road, going to North Boone. I listened to this game, so great job by the WMOI broadcast team. They were fun to listen to. From from what they were saying, they were at a pretty terrible vantage point. I think they were in the end zone, so
I
they
saw I
they
saw
had
a picture. I believe Sean Temple, who I follow, I've gotten to know over the years. I believe he sent out the tweet. Yeah, they were like deep in the corner of the end zone. Which,
yeah. So
man, come
they
on, get him a spot in the press box already.
Right. So yeah, they were having some trouble knowing, if a play went for 3 yards or if it went for 9 yards,
Yeah.
right? It just didn't have a great. They loved it when the action was coming their way, but it was when it was going the opposite way. It got a little tough. But yeah, that broadcast was great, a lot of fun. Yeah, Andy Myers, the quarterback, really really nice game. I think he had 122 yards on his own. And yeah, like you mentioned, this Titan team controlled this game the entire way. Never were threatened by North Boone. Um, and like we mentioned, that their losses were all to really good teams. This is a really really good Monmouth Roseville team, and now we get what we just mentioned, another rematch here in round 2.
Yeah, so they will now go. No, they'll be hosting Princeton
Right.
Saturday at 5 p.m. We already know the time on that one, and I believe that was a week 1 matchup, correct?
That was a week 1 game that Princeton won 40-0. Um, and they talked about this on the broadcast too, that this is a different Monmouth Roseville team. This is not going to be the team that showed up in week 1. I expect them to play much better. Now Princeton's really good. I think Princeton's a much better team even than they were in week 1. But nonetheless, exciting matchup between two really good 3A programs.
Yeah, we'll get to that Princeton result. They moved on. They're in that game. Obviously, we just talked about it, but they got the win. We'll talk about that in a minute. But another game from Friday night, Peoria Notre Dame, the 14 seed, gets the upset win, 28-13 over the Kewanee Boilermakers. The Irish controlled most of this game using a balanced rushing attack. Mitch, I'll let you kind of take over here. You saw a lot of this one for a great effort this year from the Kewanee Boilermakers. This was a, disappointing way to have the season come to an end.
Yeah, I did watch this one on Friday. So, like you said, the Irish just kind of have an old school offense. I don't know if it's wing T. It looked like it from some of their formations, but a lot of traps, a lot of draws, counters, some misdirection. Nothing fancy. They tried a couple passes. unless I'm forgetting something, I don't remember many big plays that came from the passing game, but just a really solid, balanced rushing attack. And their defense really, really kept Kiwani in check. Never let Brady Clark get into a rhythm. He went down in the first quarter, I think on the first drive, and he popped back up, but he looked like he was toughing it out the rest of the way. But regardless, it was a really, really good effort from the Irish defense. Um, in the end, they get the win. Kiwani scored late, so no quit in the Boilermakers as we would expect them to not do. So great season for them. They finish at what 8-2.
8-2. Yeah.
So a disappointing, no question, a disappointing way to go out. But this was a great year for them, and that's the unfortunate part of the playoffs. You're going to be matched up against other really good teams, and this was one of them in pure Notre Dame.
I think when you look around, just to kind of wrap up the Kiwani, talk, I think when you look around our area and players we've talked about, when you talk about truly like most valuable players to their team, Brady Clark is the top of that conversation because just what he did on offense, on defense, on special teams. I mean, we obviously talked about him being the all-time leading scorer in Kiwani football history, going back 100+ years. I just think that the impact he had on that team and just kind of the way he carried himself as a leader, it seemed like when you were watching a game, he was grinding it out. He was doing everything he could on every play to help that team. I think he's one of those players, like I said, that would be in the conversation for us for most valuable.
Oh yeah, he'll be
what
there, no
what
question.
what Kiwani got done this year was in large part to his efforts. So I think great year for him, great year for Kiwani. Disappointing way to close it out, but either way, be proud of your efforts this year for the Boilermakers. It was a great season. So, all right,
Yep.
let's get into Saturday's action. How about Anawan Weathersfield, Mitch? They
We're not
continue.
we're not talking about him enough, Greg.
Yeah, they continue to roll along, putting up huge point numbers, huge point differentials here. They get the win 41-6 over Deer Creek Mackinac. Zeb Rashid, stop me if you've heard this before, Mitch. Another huge game, 245 yards, 5 touchdowns. So I was texting with Dan Pearson this morning from FCA. That's the game he was going to contribute his highlights to WQAD. And he was excited to get out there. And he said he was hoping to get, some touchdowns from Zeb Rashid. And boy, did he ever. Boy,
He sure did.
he got highlights from Zeb Rashid. So did you have eyes on this one for a while, Mitch? Tell me about it.
I didn't. I was watching Princeton at this time, but one of my favorite accounts here, Geese Athletics, right?
Yep.
We're providing the updates. So yeah, they were coming in fast and furious, and it was again touchdown Zeb Rashid, touchdown Zeb Rashid. Oh, there's another one, touchdown Zeb Rashid. So yeah, this one, really, really good. We do not talk about these guys enough. They first of all, so Zeb Rashid had 5 of the 6 touchdowns for them today. The other one was a Dylan Horry pass to Landon Sauer. That was the third score of the game. It was 21-0 at that point. I think it was 28-0 at half. But this is the third straight game, Greg, that the Titan defense has allowed 6 points. So they exactly 6 the last 3 weeks, and the 7th time this year that they've allowed 6 or less. So as much as we talk about Zeb Rashid and Dylan Horry in that offense, this defense is superior and playing really, really good football this season.
Yeah, I mean, what they've done, over the course of this season, especially when you start looking at the second half of the season or that, after about week 3, they've really turned it on here. And this is really fun to watch. And really, and I mean, I say that, but really, it's a 1-point loss to Stark County. I know, I feel like a broken record. We talk about it every week, but that's it. They're 1 point away. They're a 2-point conversion, 1 yard short of being undefeated in this situation. Either way, they're in a really good spot here. They host Morrison Saturday, 1:00 at Weathersfield Memorial Stadium. Oh boy, that will be a doozy. That will be a great one.
Yep.
So Morrison gets the win 34-12 over Fulton. This was the game that I went to. We talked about it
Yep.
at the top of the show. Man, it was a perfect atmosphere for high school football. Morrison is a great place to watch a game, but especially on a Saturday afternoon come playoff time. Mitch, I did what we talked about. I went on the visitors side so I could get the
Yep.
the full bleachers in the background of my highlights, and it looked great. I mean, it was full. It was packed in that place. It looked amazing. Morrison looked pretty good, regardless of how I shot the video. Morrison looks pretty darn good. Fulton jumped out to a 12-0 lead. It was Morrison coming back, scoring 34 unanswered points. Brady Anderson, 161 yards, 3 touchdowns on the day. I will say that my son, who was walking the sidelines with me, very impressed with Brady Anderson's speed. He saw it up close and personal in this one, and it looked really impressive. Colton Bielema
Yep.
threw a pair of touchdown passes. Overall, this is a great effort. This is a great win for this Morrison Mustangs program in a rivalry game, a rivalry, Mitch, oh so well.
Yeah.
It's got to feel good to walk away if you're a Morrison Mustang, not only getting a round one win, but a rivalry win at that.
Yeah. First off, I think I mistyped once again on these notes. I think Brady Anderson had 171 yards, so don't want to take away anything from his effort. So,
Well, don't short him 10
um,
yards or what? Yeah. What did I?
I
Yeah.
can't do that. Yeah, I
Okay.
can't do that. Yeah. Look, this was a game that we were excited about, right? This was a game that we want to see. Well, we're going to start seeing it every year again. I think Stockpile had said this is the fourth time that they've met in playoffs in the history of both schools. So, yeah, great to have these two teams back on the gridiron. Fulton goes up early, and I had people texting me, like, "What's going on?" And I said, if you listen to the show, I had said that Fulton is a tough team. They're going to play really well, and I don't know how many people listen to me, but in the end, their faith was rewarded because Morrison comes back. So, um, good for them to face that adversity early. This is a young Morrison team, right? This is a team that's going to bring a lot of talent back next season, including Colton Bielema, like you talked about, including Brady Anderson, like you talked about. So to get this win, the first playoff win under Nate Vandermeide as head coach against a team like Fulton, really gives them, some positive momentum. Still kind of coming off of that loss to Rock Ridge. I think that's now fully in the rear view. But defensively, I think is where what impressed me the most. It looked like, and you were there. You'll be the one to talk about this, but it looked like Fulton's passing game was really working well early on, and then after that long Brady Anderson score that put them on the board and kind of completely turned the game around, they shut Fulton down.
Yeah, it was an interesting contrast of, early on, Fulton jumps out and Morrison was able to then keep it in check after that, obviously. But there were two big plays in this game that I thought were really critical. So you had in the first half, you had after in the second quarter, Brady Anderson had the touchdown to make it 12-7. But then Morrison's defense stepped up. Carson Strating grabbed an interception.
Sauce.
Yeah, that's right. He ran it down to get Morrison in, in the red zone.
It was down to the 5, wasn't it?
Yeah, yep. I was gonna say they got down pretty close to the end zone. They punch it in. So that gave them the lead at the half, 14-12, which at the time was such a huge momentum flip because we talked about Fulton jumping out in this game 12-0 and really being in control for the first quarter and a few minutes. They were really in control early in this one. And then it's all of a sudden you get you get a touchdown, then an interception, then another touchdown, and there it is. Then Morrison's got the lead. Second half, again, teams kind of exchange possessions. And on a fourth down and short, we've seen this before, Mitch. It was Deshaun McQueen back to punt. Soon as he fields the punt or the snap, the long snap, takes off and runs, breaks off a tackle down the sideline, gets about 30, 35 yards on it. That sets up Morrison's touchdown drive to put him up 22-12 at that point. I talked to Nate Vandermeide after the game, and he said that they've discussed it during the regular season, but in the moment, he did not get a chance to tell Deshaun to do that. They did not call that play. Deshaun McQueen called that on his own.
That sounds like the Princeton game where they did the
Well,
exact
you
same
said
thing.
that, yeah. You talked about that.
Yeah, and that one I can't remember if I think if I'm remembering correctly, Princeton like had a guy coming right in and could have potentially blocked it. And so
Okay.
I don't know if it was called because then as he kind of pulled away from that defender, he fumbled the ball and picked it up and then ran. So
Yeah.
again, I don't know if that was called, but either way, it worked out and a fake punt seems to work out in Morrison's favor. So yeah, if coach didn't call that play and he did it on his own, I mean, he knows what he's doing. He's done it a couple times this year, but certainly a game changing type of play.
Well, I just love the trust that Vandermeide has in his athletes, right? Because I from what I could tell in talking to Nate after the game, it is something that was not discussed directly during this game, but that they talked over the course of the season. If you see this, if you see players do certain things, and they'd punted a handful of times in the first half, so they had kind of seen some tendencies. And if you see it, trust your athleticism, make the play. And he did in the split, second decision. He's got to make that decision, make the play, and it worked out. And it's just I love that. I love that ability for letting a playmaker make a play. It's exciting football.
Well, yeah, that's why they're 9-1, right? They can one, they have the athletes to make those type of plays, and two, they have the right coaching, the right intuition to make those judgment calls, and yeah, it's what you need in playoff games. So
Yep.
a great win on a great day there in Morrison for you. Glad that you were there. Glad to get Kyle Kampmeyer there for the first time in Morrison. Certainly won't be the last with Morrison joining the NUIC next season. So we'll get this rivalry back regularly, which we like. But for now, Morrison moves on.
Yeah, I mean, again, Morrison, as always this year, looked really impressive. The speed on offense and on defense really impressed me. And especially after they kind of got, punched in the mouth early on, I think they saw what Fulton was doing and maybe they weren't matching that intensity early in the game. And players rose to the occasion. They did. They got to that point. They matched the intensity. They come away with the win. Mitch, it was a great day in Morrison. And there was some family in the house. I got to meet your mother. I
That's
got to
right.
meet Mitch's mom at the game today. So a huge day all the way around in Morrison.
Yeah, Jody was in the house. Family was there, taking in all the sights. They were questioning whether going or not because the weather looked like it was going to be cold. But I tried to push that narrative to go to the game. I'm doing the
There you
same
go.
thing about doing the same thing, trying to get them to go to Anawan. So, yeah, she was begging to meet you. We tried to get that arranged and had you credit to you. You came from the other side of the field from playing catch with Casey to go over to the concession stand. So yeah, she was thrilled about that. Took a selfie, sent it to me right away. So yeah, good to have you both in the house for to see a good win.
Awesome. Great stuff. One more note here, Mitch. A little bit of Armstrong family history today as well. My
Yeah.
son, my son hit a field goal on the Morrison field after the game today.
You posted that video a while ago of him kicking. So how far were we out tonight?
Today, I think it was basically an extra point. He was out at about the
Okay.
10, maybe a little farther back, but he was quick to note, Dad, I don't have my spikes. I don't have my tee, all the things, but he stepped up and delivered. Actually, Coach Lower from Fulton was watching on as he hit the field goals. And I think he
There you
liked what he
go.
saw. So, but fun
Yeah.
day all the way
Wonderful.
around. So, all right. So we talked about Morrison. They will go on to meet Anawan Weathersfield. Let's move in to Class 2A here. Rockridge gets the win
Ooh.
37-21 over Westville. So this was an 8-9 matchup against two teams that were 8-1. Rock Ridge is the Road Warriors. They go on the road and get the win. I know you had your eyes on this one. I
Yeah.
listened to the end of it on my way back from Morrison. Tell me about it. Great win for the Rockets.
Yeah, statement win. I think it was one of my tweets. We talked a lot about this game, right? That we and again, nothing against Westville, because they proved that they were one of the better teams in 2A in this game. It just so happens that a lot of the good two a lot of the good 2A teams are all bunched up in the north, but still for Rock Ridge to be given a 9 seed, to have to go on the road, to have to go to Western Indiana, essentially to go play this game with a freshman quarterback.
Yep.
This was a really great program win for Rock Ridge. We have talked up about their offense and their defense. This is a game that their defense really shines, forcing 6 turnovers against the Tigers. And really, this game, it seems like looking back now, it kind of the tone of the game was set pretty early. Rockets defense gets a stop. They got to start on the 1, and they finish on a 99-yard scoring drive. And that was
Yeah.
kind of what the story of the game was. These big defensive plays followed followed by their their typical explosive offense. But, you know, and we'll talk about this in a second, how the game ended. I was impressed with quarterback Schwagen, right? A freshman quarterback on the road, first postseason start. He scored through the air. He scored on the ground. He had an excellent option to Zarlatanis that went for a touchdown. You know, the moment was not too big for him. Westbrook started to come back a little bit in the second half. Rockridge did not score offensively in the second half, but talking to some Rockridge friends that really a credit to Westville on the adjustments that they made defensively against the Rockets offense. But again, he kept the team in the game and he allowed that defense to take over. And what I mean by that is this is how you win the playoff games, right, Greg? 2 defensive touchdowns in the final 3 minutes.
Yeah.
First one, I have not seen a video of this yet. Would love to see this highlight. I can picture it in my mind, and it's awesome, but I want to see how it actually looked. Jude Finch intercepted a Westville pitch and returned it for a touchdown.
Okay. Well, was it like a hook and ladder type of
I
situation?
don't know if it was like an option or if he just shot through the line and it was just a toss and he just took it and ran. I don't know. If I had to guess, because knowing what Westville's offense was and having that really good dual threat quarterback, I'm guessing it was like an option
Okay.
and he was just there in the way of the pitch and just took it to the end zone.
I heard WRMJ talking about that play. So Jim
Well, yeah,
Taylor,
we'll
Ty
have to.
Taylor,
Yeah,
and
we should have texted Ty. He would have seen it. We should have gotten some more info before we hit record on this. But
well, guess what? We
um,
have another episode coming in 2 days.
that's
We'll
right.
get that
That's right.
info. We'll get that info for
Um,
sure.
so yeah, again, I can picture that in my mind, and it's awesome in my head. Also, should mention earlier in this game, shout out to Nick Bull, whose son Landon Bull had a big interception, one of the 6 turnovers that they caused.
Yep. I
Um,
was
but,
texting him earlier tonight. So
excellent. But following that Jude Finch touchdown, not 1 minute later, Alex Zarlatanis seals the game, 65-yard pick six that finished, or sorry, he crossed the end zone with I think under 2 minutes to go. But again, those two plays were within like a minute 15 of one another of game time. So that's how you close out a road game. Those are Road Warriors. Really, really impressive stuff here from Rock Ridge.
yeah. Nick Bull, the tag team specialist that he is, would
That's
love
right.
that we called them Road Warriors. Shout out to, Hawk and Animal there.
Of course, as always.
And I was gonna say it's always nice when Alex Zarlatanis, your lead running back, gets an interception and then turns into a running back on
Yeah.
defense and basically returns a touchdown. Like
Well,
that's a nice asset
and
to have.
it's funny you mentioned that because I mentioned the option that Schwagen had pitched it to Zarlatanis, and I think it was 53 yards. And
Yeah.
Schweigen got hit, and as soon as right as he was pitching the ball, hit Zarlatanis, in stride, and boom, he was gone. So, yeah, just a really really great win for Rock Ridge. Really some good momentum here. We talked about a lot against their seeding. Because of that, now they face top seeded Seneca at home next Saturday at 2.
But they get him at home, and I think that
Get them at home.
there's a huge opportunity here because I just think that this Rockridge team is battle tested. And I go back, I said it in our playoff preview. I think Seneca's got to prove it to me. And now what Rockridge just did here defensively, especially, I mean, all the way around, all sides of the game. But yeah, I'm intrigued by this matchup.
Yeah, just speaking of Seneca, they were impressive, right? We've look, we've talked about Seneca. We talked a lot about how they've only played 7 games. Still a really good team. They won 45-0 here in the first round.
But it was a rematch of a conference opponent. So,
See, come on, see what you do here, Greg.
I know. I'm a I'm a Marquette graduate, and Seneca's always been our rival. So I guess maybe that's why maybe that's why I'm dunking on them.
But at the same time, it's a completely fair point. It's an absolutely fair point
All right, yeah,
that we might talk about in the 5A game later here, Greg.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, really looking forward to this game. Um, Again, the way that Rockridge played tonight, if they can do that against Seneca, they'll absolutely win.
See, if it would have been Stocking saying what I just said, everyone would have jumped all over Stocking and been like, "Oh, Stock, you're always so negative." So I
Yep.
get it. I get it. Fair. That's fair. All right. In other action, Wilmington, the number 5 seed, gets the win 41-14 over Mercer County. Wilmington jumped out to a 38-0 lead before a pair of Colby Cox touchdowns put the Golden Eagles on the board, but too little too late in this one. I mean, it was a tough matchup. We knew it would be a tough matchup. Mercer County ends their season at 6-4.
Yeah. Again, we knew that Wilmington was one of those teams that were teetering on 3A and 2A. They've won state titles in both in the last couple of years, so it's a tough draw for Mercer County. We knew they had to play pretty perfectly, and even if they had today, it was just a really tough hurdle to climb. But yeah, Colby Cox had a couple of touchdowns to end it, including a 95-yard touchdown pass that went to William Fredrickson, and then he followed that up with a touchdown run of his own. Both of those were in the fourth quarter, so yeah, a tough loss here to a really good Wilmington team who I think, let me pull up the bracket here. They play Tri Valley next. Wilmington does. That'll be a good game. The winner of
Yeah.
that would play the
Yep.
winner of Rockridge and Seneca. So this 2A North, whew, boy. I think maybe Greg, what we'll do after we're done, we'll go through the brackets kind of and see what happened and
Yep.
who's left. But this 2A North, my goodness, it is really really good.
Yeah. One more thing I want to add on to this, to this Mercer County season to wrap it up. It's a good first season for Tanner Matlick. Maybe
Great
not
for season.
maybe not the way not the record they wanted necessarily, ending at 6-4, but I think we did see consistent improvement throughout the year. And I think I've liked what I've heard from him throughout the season, right? I mean, in interviews on WRMJ on Sportsline on Saturday mornings, I think he's been open, he's been candid about, the adjustments they've been making in his first year, and I think they were getting consistently better. They were healthy by the end of the year. They ran into this tough Wilmington team, so they don't come away with the win here. But I think overall, it's a good building block for this Mercer County team.
Yeah, I agree with that. Anytime you have a first year coach and you go to the playoffs, that's a great year in my book. So, um, yeah, a lot of fun to watch these guys. A lot of fun to watch Colby Cox play this year. So, looking forward to what Mercer County and that Golden Eagle team can do here moving forward under Coach Matlick, and we'll be ready to see them next year.
Yep. Well, a few more results from the Lincoln Land big school side of things. Moments gets the win 16-8 over Knoxville. So Moments was the 7 seed, Knoxville was 10. Blue Bullets got on the board first, but Moments would get one of their own. It was 8-8 for most of the game until Moments would jump ahead in the late part of the third quarter. So that would do it. 16-8 was the final score. Knoxville's season ends at 7-3. Man, I don't know what you say about, this Knoxville team was great. They had a great season, but man, the last, was it 3 weeks in a row? Three losses to end the season it's a tough way to go out.
Is that what happened? I'm trying to remember correctly, right? Who they lose to? They lost to Farmington, Fulton Farmington, and then this game here. So yeah, when they started out 7-0, they looked so good doing it, and then you know looking at their schedule, of course they had that big win over Mercer County, right? 44-0. They beat a good Illini West team 42-12. So I don't want to say that they played good against only bad teams because I don't think that's true at all. But they ran into three good teams. That Fulton game still is just a mystery to me. Um, played tough against. I mean, think about it here. They lost three games. Fulton was something, but then they lost their last two games by 8 points each. So they
Yeah.
were in those games. Just their offense just kind of those weeks 2 through 7, Knoxville scored 40 plus, and they didn't get over 20 in the last 3 weeks. So,
Well,
um, that just I don't know. I don't know if those defenses just, and again, Farmington and Momentum and Fulton have really really great defenses. So disappointing to say the least about Knoxville. But they played hard, they played tough as we know the Blue Bullets teams to do. They'll be back, and again, we'll look forward to seeing them next year.
yeah, I mean, obviously the Fulton game is, if you're Knoxville, one to forget. But these last two games against Farmington and Moments, both teams that are now sitting at 9-1, as Farmington got the win today. We'll talk about that in a second. But it's like Farmington Moments, both 9-1, and Knoxville hung around in those games, just came up a little bit short in both of them. So it's a tough way to go out, but they weren't blown out. They were certainly in these last two games. But either way, it's tough, for as well as the season started, this kind of ends with a thud here. But either way, it's
Hmm.
yeah, end of a season. Either way, Knoxville was 7-3 to wrap up. Let's move into Farmington, which we just referenced. They get the win 28-23 over Bismarck Henning, Rossville, Alvin. Back and forth in this one. Farmers only ran 8 plays in the second half, trailing 23-22 before their game winning drive. But Mitch, I'm going to let you get into this because you were kind of following along with this one. It
Yeah,
got crazy.
yeah, back and forth. BHRA takes, or, yeah, BHRA takes a 23-22 lead. And let me say that first. The Farmer defense kind of came up with a big turnover. They forced a fumble with about 4 minutes left. That was when BHRA was trying to run down the clock a little bit, trying to run it out and seal the win. They get the turnover. They end that drive with a wheelwright to wheelwright TD. They go up 28-23. And that's when things got a little weird. Final play. I don't know what yardage they were at. Maybe the 25, I think. Um, Bismarck Henning Rossville Alvin throws a pass. There's no time. There's no time left on the clock. Throws a pass into the end zone. It goes into the back portion, like near the goal post, like in the center. Um,
Okay.
it reaches the hands of a receiver. It looks, if you watch it, and Coach Vallis sent us, if you're watching the NFHS feed, because of course those cameras like are never following the action, you
Yeah.
couldn't see what happened. But I'm really glad that Coach Vallis sent us a video from the end zone. This pass hits a, a BHRA receiver in the hands. His feet are in bounds. And even from the video, it's a little bit choppy, but the ref is right there. I mean, feet away.
Yeah.
And he signals right away that he um, did not have possession. And I think that's the right call. I'm not saying that it wasn't,
Okay. Okay.
but that's how close it was. it got behind Farmington's defense. I mean, there were defenders there, but it clearly
Yeah.
hits this receiver in the hands. His feet are in bounds, but he can't get possession of it. And you just see the dejection on all of their players, like just falling to the ground, trying to plead that he caught it, and just an incredible ending to a playoff game. Coach Vallis wanted to make a point too that they were nothing but class about the situation, that they were a really respectful opponent, even in a tough loss. So all the credit in the world to BHRA on handling that tough way to lose with class. And you love to see that come playoff time in such terrible circumstances. But in the end, man, Farmington, they come away with the win. Um, they're going to have a tough one here coming up with Bloomington Central Catholic. They ended up winning 47-0 tonight, but again, this is the type of win that you want to have in your in your inventory or in your head going up against a good team like Bloomington Central. And just a no quit attitude and fight till the very last whistle. It worked out for Farmington here, and they're moving on.
Yeah, I mean, overall, this this Farmington team has impressed us. They've, gotten some big wins, but they've also had some wins where they've had to battle. They've had to fight for it. And so this is certainly one of those wins that they had to fight for it, get the win. So they gotta, move on to Bloomington Central Catholic, who looks really good, who's kind of one of the teams we've pegged as a favorite potentially on this side of the bracket, just based on what we've seen. But I like what Farmington's doing right now. This is impressive and a great win. And really cool to hear about, the sportsmanship on both sides, that
Mhm.
a call was made, it was close, and both teams want to get that call. And certainly Bismarck Henning wishes it would have gone their way, but it's great to hear the sportsmanship there. And that's what that type of game is, what the playoffs are all about, right? I can't wait
Oh
to
yeah.
see that. I gotta see the ending there. I want to watch that one. But all right, we getting into class 3A here. We got a few teams to run down in 3A.
Yep.
Dupek makes a statement win
Woo.
over big northern opponent Oregon, 34-0. Dupek was the 5 seed, Oregon was the 12 seed. Tight game early on, and then the Rivermen outscore the Hawks 27-0 in the second half. So really great effort here from the Rivermen to kind of set the tone in the second half and get the job done.
Yeah, only 7-0 at halftime. But they came out and really put it to Oregon in the second half. Balanced attack, 178 yards passing and 2 touchdowns, 174 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns. Defense kept Oregon in check all afternoon. 4 turnovers. They had a pick and 3 fumble recoveries. So yeah, this was a really great game for Dupek. Love to see a shutout win like this. They looked great doing it. They had their all black uniforms on with the pink lettering and numbers for it's their breast cancer awareness uniform. So they looked really great in this one. And yeah, this was a really. I don't know that I saw Dupek winning this big against Oregon. We knew that Oregon was coming in at 5-4. We've talked about the Big Northern maybe not being as good as they have been in years past. Although I didn't see what the Byron score was, but I think they were up 42-0 at halftime.
Yeah.
But regardless, balanced attack, right? Cooper Hoffman didn't have to throw for 300 yards. Really great game from all the running backs from the Rivermen. And they're moving on and going up against yet another Big Northern team next week in a game that I think they're going to have a shot at winning this one too. So great start to the playoff campaign for Dupek. Looking forward to next week.
Well, I was going to say, we talked about it in the preview podcast that Dupek has a chance in this playoff field to really prove themselves against the Big Northern. So they passed this test against Oregon. Now they go up against Stillman Valley. Mitch, Stillman Valley beat
I'm
Chicago
laughing.
Noble Johnson. Well,
Yeah,
go
go
ahead.
I'm laughing because the Byron score was 72-0.
Okay. Okay. So I would say Byron passed the test then against Chicago Noble
Yeah,
Hansberry.
barely.
Yeah.
Yep, just barely.
So Stillman Valley, they beat Chicago Noble Johnson, who is an 8-1 team, but out of the Chicago Public League, they beat them 21-20. So it was a close
Right.
game there. So,
Right.
you read into these final scores as you will, but I think this really, to me, shows that man, Dupec should be the favorite going into this one.
They'd be my favorite, I think. Yeah. Even if Stillman Valley didn't play at Chicago Public School and still won, I've just been so impressed with Dupec this year, and again that Big Northern just they have not been impressive. They didn't have a good day today outside of Byron. Even Dixon, who was really good, I think they won by 3 on Friday night. So
Yep.
um, yeah, looking forward to Dupec. If they do get past Stillman Valley, they would potentially play Byron in the quarterfinals. So um, yeah, but for now, great win for Dupec. Great win to beat Oregon, and we'll have to learn a little bit, maybe catch some film on Stillman Valley just to see what they're all about, and we'll
Yeah.
have more on them on Monday night.
Yeah. I guess I should clarify that obviously Dupec would be the favorite based on seeding and based on record. But I think just in general, when you start looking at the Northwest Upstate Illini, primarily smaller schools, albeit great small schools, against the Big Northern, which is tending to be all 3A, 4A schools, that's where the matchup becomes really interesting. But either way, yeah, I think that like I said, I think Dupec is the favorite moving into this second round game. It's another chance to prove themselves against the Big Northern. And then you're assuming down the road they have that really good chance against Byron in the quarterfinals. They can get by this one. So
Yeah.
that's discussion for down the road. Other results in the Class 3A field: Princeton gets the win 44-7 over Paxton Buckley Loda. Tigers controlled both sides of the ball all game. They won the field position battle. That led to some short drives. Casey Etheridge, Ace Christensen each had a pair of touchdowns. Will Lott threw 2 touchdown passes. Noah Laporte had an interception before the half. This game finished in under 2 hours, so fast and
Yep.
effective for the Princeton Tigers.
Yep. I watched this one until halftime. It was 38 nothing at half. Yeah, they played Princeton football. They were able to just sustain drives the whole time. Um, when they forced PBL to punt, the punts were either from deep in their own territory or they just weren't good punts. They started on their own side of the 50 a handful of times. So, yeah, Princeton made quick work of this game. Noah Laporte, you mentioned his interception. It was like a tipped pass that he dove for and caught. And then that was with, I think, under 2 minutes in the first half. And then he is the reception or gets the reception from a Will Lott pass, which is just kind of like, it was a beautiful pass, probably 25, 30 yards, maybe 33 yards. I think now that I'm trying to think about it, something around 30, we'll say. Beautiful pass right into the pylon in the front part of the end zone. And Laporte kind of positions himself on his defender in the perfect way possible. And of course, he's 6'6", so most defenders don't have a shot anyway. But he gets in the great position, jumps up, high points the ball, lands in the end zone. It was a great play right before half. So, yeah, like I said, this was a Princeton game if I've ever seen one. They roll, and then they're moving on to face Monmouth Roseville once again here in the second round.
I was going to say it'll be a rematch of week 1, which we talked about earlier in the episode. Monmouth Roseville and Princeton will be Saturday at 5 o'clock. Well, we'll dive in a little more in a second here on some of these brackets, but let's keep going
Yep.
down the way. In Class 4A, Immaculate or IC Catholic gets the win 35-12 over Geneseo. AJ Weller, Colton Schmalberton found the end zone for the Leafs, but the defending champs here in the Knights were too much. IC
Mhm.
Catholic quarterback Dennis Mandala threw a pair of touchdowns. Joey Gelada added a pair as well. I saw this one a little bit early in the game, and IC Catholic was up, I believe, 12-6 or 13-6, and
Mhm.
they were driving downfield. Geneseo did get a turnover on down, or did get a turnover and was able to get the ball back, but just not enough here. This I think IC Catholic program is just impressive.
Yeah, it looks like Geneseo made some timely stops, but just the offense just couldn't capitalize on them. Um, and yeah, that's going to happen against an IC Catholic team. We rattled off their names and the college commits that they have on that program. So Tough draw for Geneseo, right? And we talked about it with Knoxville. The season for Geneseo did not end the way that they would have liked. Um, what was that? They would have lost 4 or 5, right?
I,
Um,
yeah, I mean, they stumbled down the stretch. I mean, they lost to
right.
Rock Island in week 9. So, yeah.
Right. So yeah, they finished at 6-4, yet another playoff year. But again, the sour taste in the mouth of Maple Leafs, I'm sure. But they were fun to cover.
Yep.
A lot of great players on that team that we enjoyed seeing week after week. So again, tough draw for them here against IC Catholic, but they will be the ones that move on, and in 4A they might have a shot at going all the way.
Yep. Well, let's get into a couple more teams from the Western Big Six to cover. Then we'll get into 8-man. In Class 5A, Mitch, it's a game we talked about.
Yep.
Sterling Golden Warriors get into the playoffs at 4-5. They
Yep.
go up against Chicago Peyton on the road, who was undefeated, the number 1 seed,
Yep.
and Sterling gets the job done convincingly, leaving no doubt, 50-0. The 16 seeded Sterling Golden Warriors, 50-0, Mitch. Where do you want to start here?
It's one of those things that like it almost doesn't take you by surprise, right? Like
Yeah,
we
I
we
know.
talked about this. We talked about how it was a good draw for Sterling, and that we thought this would happen. Maybe not 50-0. Okay, certainly not 50-0, right? Certainly not 50-0. But we didn't think that they would have a problem here. Um, Certainly things can happen, but it's just another example of a Chicago public school. And we're not taking anything away from how those teams do their business. That is geographically landlocked for the most part. They have to play other teams, So from the Chicago Public League, it's just another example of teams that come out of there with a good record. We just talked about it in the last class. I think in was it 3A North? I think at 3A North, 4 Chicago public school teams
Yeah.
lost in the first round.
Yep.
So it's just the nature of the play that comes out of that area. You have the good schools out of Chicago, but none of them are ever out of the Chicago Public League. So yeah, this was the very first play, the opening kickoff. I don't even know how this happened. The coverage team for Sterling, because Sterling kicked, like forced Peyton into their own end zone, and they got a safety out of it. Like,
I did see the highlight of that actually. I saw the play. The Chicago Peyton return man dropped back at about his own 2 or 3 yard line and went to grab the ball and kind of fumbled or didn't grab a hold of it, and it
yeah,
went backwards. The bounce took it into the end zone. He tried to scoop it up, and by that time, 2 or 3 Sterling defenders jumped all over it and got him before he could get out of the end zone. So it was
yeah.
a weird kind of fluky play, but yeah, that does kind of set the tone or kind of tell the
And that,
story.
oh yeah, it set the tone for sure. They were out. They were out early, and Kale Lettergerber had 2 pick sixes in the second quarter, and I think he was Sterling's high running man with 106 yards. Drew Nettleton was 5 of 7 passing for 67 yards and a pair of scores. The defense did their part. Peyton only had 81 yards of offense. So again, you hate to say that you expected this. We did expect Sterling to win. Didn't expect a 50-point win at that, but hey, a great win for Sterling. And now they've got a chance at a rematch of a team that they played against earlier in this year, and see if they can do it again.
Yeah. I mean, I think, we've seen it and we've talked about it. The only team that's ever really bucked the trend was that
Yep.
Chicago Phillips program, which
Hmm.
Sterling knows all too well. They played Chicago Phillips in the state semifinals, I believe. And so, they know all too well the program that was, has risen above all of it in the Chicago Public League was Phillips. And other than that, you haven't seen it. You have not seen success from the public league schools in the IHSA playoffs. And
Right.
a part of it is probably, just based on, geographic, like where they're located in the city of Chicago. They struggle to have the resources to compete at this high level. And
Mhm.
it's unfortunate. I don't want to, rag on these and I want to tear these teams down. But yeah, we did kind of see this coming, unfortunately.
You just y yeah, you just wish that there was some way of determining strength of schedule a little bit better, right?
Yes.
Because
Yep.
we do it by wins,
Yep.
and that's fine, and that's fine because most of the time it works out great. But Chicago Payton could have been seated 16th. Truthfully, right? The result's
Yeah.
the same.
Yeah.
So I just wish there was something here. And and we talked about it too, and we'll talk about the Nazareth game in a little bit. This game almost didn't happen. This
Well,
first, certainly because Sterling almost didn't get in, but they almost did. They almost did get in and not play Chicago Payton. So,
let's just
um,
let's get into that real quick. It's an interesting side note. I was, you know, told, through, talking to some people this week that Chicago Payton beat Lincoln Park 13-12 on Saturday of week 9. So a 1-point result on Saturday with Payton getting the win. That meant that set up the Payton versus Sterling game. If Lincoln Park would have won that game, so if Payton would have fallen to 8-1, that would have meant that Sterling would have had to have then played the top seed, which would have been Prairie Ridge, which Prairie Ridge is a dominant program, has been a great program year in and year out. As it turns
mhm,
out, weirdly enough, Sterling gets the win over Chicago Payton. Prairie Ridge has to play Nazareth Academy,
Nazareth,
who is a 4-1 team or a 4-5 team, and
right?
Nazareth gets the upset win. So just the weird way the playoffs work out, very bizarre.
Yeah, and that's a crazy game. Nazareth's the defending champs, right?
Were they last year or a couple years ago?
Yeah, I thought they were last year. Anyway, um, they've got a stud quarterback who I think he's only a junior. I think he started every year. So last year as a sophomore. I'm gonna look it up right now because I thought that they had won. They did. They won last year. They beat Peoria 45-44
That's right.
in
Yeah,
the
that was a
championship game last
great
year.
game. Yeah, it was a great championship game. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
Okay.
and against Prairie Ridge, who was a finalist last year and lost to East St. Louis. So yeah, you say upset. I don't know because record wise, certainly a 4-5 team beats an undefeated team, but we just are talking about that in the Sterling game too, and that's not an upset. So,
Yeah.
um, just a crazy, just when we talk about this in the playoff show, that a lot of crazy things can happen, and how one game is a domino effect for other things to happen. It's like the butterfly effect.
Yeah.
One thing changes
Yeah.
1,000 other things, and this is one of those cases. So, yeah, in the end, look, good for Sterling. Um, Regardless of where they were seated, regardless of who they played, it's a playoff win for them. Yet another playoff win for them. And as I said, they get a rematch against Wheaton St. Francis here in round 2, who they
Yep.
played in week 2, I think, this year.
Yeah. I
Um,
believe it was week 2.
Week 2, and then that was a loss. That was a Wheaton St. Francis
Yep.
win.
Hmm.
I'm gonna pull that up really quick here. Yeah, 42-28. So, and that was, if you remember too, Greg, that was when Sterling was kind of at influx at quarterback. They hadn't figured out everything just yet. They're a much better team, I think. Certainly that Rock Island game aside, they're a much better team than they were in week 2. So this should be an interesting matchup, I think. We'll talk more about it on Monday night, but once again, another rematch that we get to see here in the playoffs.
Yeah, I still just can't get over the way these seedings came down to 1 point. A
Yep.
1 point win for Chicago Payton puts them up there at that 1 seed. And Sterling's able to take advantage of it. And now see what they can do from here on out. But yeah, we'll talk more about the brackets in a minute here before we wrap everything up. But in Class 7A, one more team in the 11-man division. We'll get into 8-man in
Right.
a second here as well. 7A, Quincy, the Blue Devils, 44-14 over West Chicago. I could not believe this. First time in school history that Quincy has won a home playoff game. So,
Yeah.
of all the history that Quincy's making this year, this is huge. This is huge for that community to be able to be at home and celebrate a win.
Yep, and per our guy Shuckman, second time in Quincy, the Gem City's history, that both Quincy, and we'll talk about this in a second, Quincy Notre Dame have won playoff games on the same day. The other time was 2013.
And Quincy Notre Dame was on the road because they were I believe, a 16 seed. But either way,
Yeah.
yes. But you're right. Yeah.
No, what I mean is that it's
Yeah.
the first
No,
time in like Quincy history. Yeah,
I
not that they've
know.
won both in
Yeah.
Quincy, right?
Yeah. No, that's what. Yeah. So,
But yeah, I had eyes on this one. This was this was a Quincy game too from the jump. Tycho Hammers had 3 touchdowns, receiving touchdowns in the first half. He ended up with 4. They were up 35-0 at half. This was a cakewalk for Quincy. So good to get them. Again, they had that nice win over Muhammad Seymour week 9, who Muhammad Seymour lost today. Good win
yep.
for them. There, good win for Quincy here in round 1, just to get into the motion of the playoffs. Hosting, obviously, that was great for them, but that entire team. There's now I keep hearing about this. Shuckman just posted some pictures of it. I guess Rico Clay put like a hit of the year on one of the Chicago defenders. I guess you could hear it from Missouri. So would love to see video of that. So that Quincy defense flying around the ball as they have all season. The offense scoring points at will. Great game for them. They go up against a really really good team in Wheat North in round 2, but they played well enough that it should give them a lot of confidence heading into that game.
Yep. All right. Well, that is our 11-man results and storylines. Let's get into 8-man here, and then we'll
Okay.
bounce back and talk through the brackets. We'll talk through the 8-man bracket kind of as we go. Then we'll get back into some bracket talk. The results from the 8-man division here. Ridgewood gets the road win 42-30 over South Fork. So nice win for the Spartans here. This is a team that we've been really impressed with the way they've played and kind of the games they've almost won, but certainly the games they've won as well. We've been impressed with. This is another one here to move along. River Ridge falls to Martinsville 50-8. That Martinsville team looks really good. They look like a team to contend with here. They move in to the the Elite 8 in the 8-man ranks. Amboy gets the easy win 54-6 over Hiawatha. No surprise really in that one. Milledgeville 56-8 over Orangeville. Polo gets the win 40-16 over West Prairie. So let's get into our quarterfinal matchups. St. Thomas More, the number 1 seed, will go on the road to number 9 seeded Ridgewood. You have Martinsville will go on the road to Pawnee. Polo taking on rival Milledgeville. That will be in Milledgeville. And Flanagan Cornell Woodland will go on the road to Amboy. So not a whole lot of surprising results around, the state here from the 8-man ranks, but a lot of really good matchups here in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, I think so. Highlighted by Polo and Milledgeville, right? I think that's one game that if anyone's going to beat Amboy, I think it comes either in Polo or Milledgeville. And certainly that would be the semifinal matchup, I believe. So
Yep.
that'll be a great game. 2 really good teams that have been fun to watch in Milledgeville and Polo. Amboy, you mentioned, I think 56 or 54-6 was the halftime score, or it might have even been in the first quarter. I don't know. Amboy was up by a lot early, so no slowing down Amboy so far. I'm interested to see if Ridgeview can put up with St. Thomas More. Been really impressed with Ridgewood this year. St. Thomas More is really good too, but I think especially at home, Ridgewood has a shot there. But yeah, nothing really surprising in the games this week. But I would say going into, and we'll talk about it on Monday night at the next show. Probably the highlight game will be that Polo at Milledgeville game.
Yeah, I think that Polo at Milledgeville rematch is huge. That's a game I'll be following for sure when you're talking about teams from our area. But I'm interested to see what this Ridgewood team can do against, Peace Boomba in that St. Thomas More team. St. Thomas More is great. They've had a great season. Obviously, they've earned the number 1 seed, But when you look back at week 9, they got past Martinsville, but it was a close game. Martinsville hung around till the very end of that game. And I think when you've seen what Ridgewood has done, coming really close to wins against Polo and a close win or a close loss to Amboy as well, they've competed with the big boys. They've competed with the best teams in 8-man from our area. So what can they do against this one, at home against St. Thomas More? I'm really excited to see that one. And Amboy, they look primed to make that run. But I think that, obviously got to get the job done this week. We'll talk about more against their matchup with Flanagan, Cornell, Woodland. But if they get by that one, then it sets up a rematch against either Milledgeville or Polo. We'll talk a lot about that down the way. But a lot of exciting stuff here in the I-8FA playoffs. If you want to know more, if you want to get in depth on the 8-man division, I encourage everyone to go out and check out I-8FA Spotlight. It's a podcast. I found it on Facebook. There's a Illinois 8-man Facebook group that I found, and they post episodes weekly. Our guy from Polo, Joe Meridian, is in on that, and they do a really good job of deep diving 8-man. So we'll be following along for sure, and I encourage people to go out and check that one out as well. Well, Mitch, before we wrap up this episode, we're going to go back through some of the brackets here, and you had some scores that stood out to you, and then maybe we'll just start looking through the brackets.
Yeah, and we'll get into those as we kind of go through here. But yeah,
Okay.
Dunlop lost in 2 overtimes. We talked about the Nazareth win. We'll talk about Quincy Notre Dame, and we'll talk about what Althoff did. But yeah, let's jump into 1A here.
Yep.
No big surprises. As I don't think the biggest, or actually I should say there was only 2 upsets in terms of seeding. You had the Rova Williamsfield win over Sterling Newman. That was a 10 over a 7. And then in the South, you had Calhoun, who's a 9 seed over the 8 seed Hayworth, which we've been impressed with Calhoun. That's a team that Kyle is really big on. So just kind of running down what we got. We got Lena Winslow and Forreston. You've got Anawan Weathersfield and Morrison, Stark County and Rova Williamsfield. Chicago Hope, they won big over Peru St. Bede. They will play hosts to Aurora Christian. That should be a good game there.
That'll be a rematch of the regular season as well. Yep.
Camp Point Central, the top seed in the South, came away 54-0. They will play that Calhoun team in the second round. Althoff Catholic, the team that we think will probably get out of the South. Greg, they put up 62 points in the first half against Tuscola. They ended with 76. They gave up 41.
Yeah.
But yeah, a 76-41 score, you don't see that too often. So Althoff gets the win there. They will play Leroy, who won 45-14. Cesar Valley won. They play Salt Fork. And then the final game in the South there is Greenfield Northwestern will go up against Casey Westfield, two good programs who both had good wins today. So yeah, nothing real shocking here in 1A.
No, you look around, our side of the state, and Lena Winslow and Forreston is a rematch of the regular season. Stark County and Rova Williamsfield, a rematch. And then just an interesting matchup between Anawan Weathersfield and Morrison, which I believe those two teams met up in the postseason a couple years ago as well.
That was a quarterfinal in 17 or 18, but yep.
Okay. Yep. So there you go. So those will be great games. We'll talk about those on the podcast that comes out Tuesday morning. But All right, let's get into Class 2A.
2A, we talked about it. Top seed Seneca, they'll play the 9 seed Rock Ridge. That game will be at Rock Ridge. The game right under them, Tri-Valley and Wilmington, 2 teams who are very used to playing for state championships. That'll be a great game in the second round. Speaking of teams that know their way around the state championships, Borough Forsyth, they won big 42-6 in their round 1 game. They'll play Moments, who beat Knoxville. And as mentioned, Farmington and Bloomington Central Catholic will play. That game will be at Bloomington Central Catholic. In the South, Greg, the 16 seed Quincy Notre Dame at 4-5 comes away with a 21-14 win over Arthur Lovington at Wood Hammond. A team that we talked about that could make some noise coming into the playoffs if they got in, and they certainly did it here in round 1.
Yeah, this matchup, Quincy Notre Dame will host Nashville in the second round. That's an intriguing matchup. Obviously, the reasons we like Quincy Notre Dame, they got in at 4-5. They've played a really tough schedule, and now that they're in this 2A bracket, it's just really interesting to see how this plays out. But you're going up against a Nashville team that's had a lot of success, in the postseason. They went to a state championship game at least once or maybe twice in the last few years.
Lost
So
to Newman.
yeah, they lost to Newman. They also, I believe, lost to Wilmington a couple years ago as well. But either way,
Okay.
they've made a couple really good runs to the state title game. So that's a matchup that stands out to me. Athen's got the win. They will go up against Redbud in the second round. Shelbyville is moving on. They'll play Vandalia. Johnston City will go up against Breeze Mater Day. Breeze Mater Day is a team that I kind of had my eye on early on,
Hmm.
but this will be a tough matchup against Johnston City. Um, on the top half of things, man, how about Bloomington Central Catholic and Farmington? That game's going to be good.
Right. Yeah, I look at look at all these games again:
Yeah.
Seneca Rock Ridge, Tri Valley Wilmington, Moreau Forsyth Moments, and Bloomington Central and Farmington. So yeah, we talked about the 2A North being just as tough, maybe if not tougher. Hard to say,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Than the 1A North, but just a gauntlet here for whoever comes out of that bracket.
Well, look at the records. 10-0 Seneca, 9-1 Rock Ridge, 10-0 Tri Valley, 9-1 Wilmington, 10-0
Yeah.
Moreau Forsyth, 9-1.
Yeah. And speaking of that, Kyle had tweeted that out just a little bit ago before we started. The final 8 in the 2A North have a combined record of 76-4.
Yeah, because then Bloomington Central Catholic 10-0, Farmington 9-1. So that
Yep.
you go down that whole list. Nobody has more than one loss.
Yep. His point being that you can't eliminate travel ever, no matter how you do it. So just get back to 1 through 32.
Yeah,
So,
there we go. Amen. All right, Class 3A. It's a lot of big northern teams, but a lot of
yep.
opportunity here for our local area, I think. Byron is obviously moving along 72-0. Stillman Valley, like we talked about, going up against Dupec. I like that matchup. I'm interested to
Hmm.
see how that game plays out. Princeton in a rematch with Monmouth Roseville. Prairie Central gets the win. They go up against Lombard Montini. On the southern half, DuQuoin and Tolono Unity. You also have Mount Carmel, the Aces, against Sullivan, Oka Valley, Greenville and Stanford Olympia, Roxana, and St. Joe Ogden. So, what stands out to you? What are you looking at here, Mitch?
Yeah, nothing. I don't think anything too crazy. We said earlier there was one, two, three, four teams in 3A North that were Chicago Public Schools. All of
Yeah,
them lost, including the 3 seed, which was Chicago North Lawndale Charter. That was the Prairie Central win, 48-6. So again, not to beat the horse on that, but you know where I'm going with it.
yeah,
Um, yeah, DeCoin only won by a touchdown over Monticello. A lot of close games in the southern part of the bracket, but just looking at the north where we're going to stay. Really looking forward to Dupec Stillman Valley. Really like Princeton and Monmouth Roseville. So, I think we'll have at least one team get to the quarterfinals, potentially two, and looking forward to these matchups. Yeah.
yeah. On this southern half of the bracket, I'm looking at maybe potential, if you're looking for potential upsets, Tolono Unity hosting
Yep.
DuQuoin.
I think so.
DuQuoin,
Yep.
DuQuoin's undefeated, but man, Tolono Unity, they're battle tested in their conference play. They're coming off the big win over Williamsville, 35-21. I'm also looking at Stanford Olympia. Same thing, battle tested, played a really good conference schedule this year. They're going on the road to Greenville, but I think there's a chance there as well.
Yep.
All right, we get into, quickly gloss over 4A through 7 or 8A here. I don't know how much we want to talk. We don't have anybody left in 4A near our
Yeah. We just
area. Near our
no.
area,
Yeah.
Dixon
We
got the
just kind of
win.
quickly just dance right through here for a Diet who is the number 1 seed. They won 28-14 over Chicago Agro Science. So again, I don't know. Big ones, the big games here. You had St. Vider They beat Richmond Burton 14 nothing. Wheaton Academy won 68 to nothing. You'll have a good one in the second round in Boylan Catholic against IC Catholic. Great
Yep.
matchup there. Dixon, who I mentioned earlier, they only won by 3 over Plano. That was a good game on Friday. St. Lawrence looked really good. Another Chicago, they went up against another Chicago public school, 64 to nothing there. Um, in the South, Rochester and Coal City will be really good. Coal City won
Yep.
44 to nothing. Rochester is Rochester. And Pure Notre Dame, the team that we talked about now, sitting at 6-4, they'll play a Harrisburg team that came away with a 23-12 upset win over Carterville. So,
Yep.
yeah, I don't know much about most of these teams here in 4A. So, but looking again at Rochester Coal City is going to be a lot of fun, and IC Catholic and Boylan Catholic will be a good one.
Yeah. We'll jump into 5A as we talked a lot about, I guess. Sterling got the win as the 16th seed. They now take on, they'll host the 8th seed, Wheaton St. Francis. That'll be a rematch of a regular season non conference game. You had Chicago Morgan Park. They got the win over Chicago Corliss. They will take on the 5 seed Sycamore. I fully expect that Sycamore wins that game. So you're looking at Sycamore will go up against either Wheaton St. Francis or Sterling. So all teams that Sterling is familiar with playing, and certainly Sycamore and Sterling have battled back and forth in years past. That'd be an interesting quarterfinal matchup if Sterling can get the job done. Nazareth Academy got the win as the 15 seed. So you had the 15 and the 16 seed getting wins here in the
Yep.
northern half. Interesting. They will go up against Glenbard North, who's 9-1. Antioch undefeated. They're 10-0. They will take on Mundelein Carmel. On the southern half of the bracket, this is some games that get really good.
Oh yeah.
Morris 10-0. Sacred Heart Griffin 7-3. That game will be at Sacred Heart in Springfield. That's a great matchup of all-time classic
Yep.
programs in IHSA history. Triad will go on the road to Joliet Catholic. Providence Catholic will go on the road to Country Club Hills, Hillcrest, and Highland and Metamora. So jam-packed there, names of all-time programs in Class 5A.
Yep.
All right, should we jump ahead? Do we want to do 6A or just get into 7A here with Quincy?
I'm looking at it now.
Okay.
I don't see anything happening here. We talked about Dunlap. They lost to Eisenhower in 2 OT. Dunlap went for it on a 2-point conversion. It got knocked down. That's how it ended. They went for the win. Kankakee, the top seed in the South, they advanced. You've got East St. Louis down there. They won 61 to nothing over Lamont. Cary Grove, they won. They were the champs 2 years ago, right?
Sounds right. Yep.
They're moving on. You had okay. Here's another example, and I guess I think Lake Forest is a public school, but they're not Chicago public. They were the 15 seed. I think they were up 42 to nothing in the first quarter against Chicago Lakeview.
Yeah.
So they move on. The top seed in the North, Lake Zurich, they'll play Caneland, who's a really good program too. So yeah, truth be told, Greg, I don't know anything about 6A, so
Yeah.
we can move on.
Well, getting into 7A in that southern half of the bracket, which is what we're concerned with Quincy. They're the 3
Yep.
seed. They'll take on the 19 seed Wheaton North, who's 7-3. We'll talk about that matchup more on our Tuesday episode, the
Who'd they
regular
beat, Greg?
podcast.
Who'd they beat?
Who's that?
Wheaton North.
Wheaton North defeated Whitney Young 34
Where are
to
they
nothing.
from? Where are they from?
I believe they would be a Chicago Public League team, Mitch. Okay. So
Wheaton North, though, Wheaton North went to the title game since we started the show. I don't remember how many years ago it was, but they're very good, very, very good program.
So Wheaton North is 7-3 this year. They will host Quincy. So it's the 19 seed versus the
Long
3
trip.
seed in Quincy. Yep, that'll be a long haul for Quincy. Looking ahead, if the Blue Devils can get the job done there, then you're looking at the 6 seed Chicago Mount Carmel, 9-1. Obviously, I don't think I need to tell anyone around the state. That's a great program. That's a great football team there. Or they will play Mount Carmel in the second round. Will play the 11 seed Mount Prospect. So
Yep.
that's a 9-1 versus 8-2 matchup there. So
Yep.
It
I was just gonna say again, I don't know a whole lot here in 7A, but
no.
I was intrigued by Batavia and Brother Rice,
Yep.
and Batavia won 46 to nothing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so and Batavia, a team that I think was in the state finals last year. Um, really, really impressive win. They played Lincoln Way Central. Hononigas, the 2 seed, they won. Willowbrook, they won. The top seed in 7A is a normal community. They won 43 to nothing over Argo. Um, and yeah, again, I don't know much about these teams. So looking forward to Quincy Wheaton North. I do want to look into the Wheaton North a little more just to see
Yep.
what they've got. And we'll have that again on the Tuesday morning show.
I think what I'm most excited for now that Quincy's gotten this win over West Chicago, it's what I talked about in the podcast last week. What I'm really excited for is now the opportunity for this Quincy team, with all their weapons, with all the success they've had this year, to really put it all to the test against some really good programs, right? Starts this
Mhm.
week with Wheaton North. If they can prove themselves in this one, then you got more programs with even more, maybe higher profile waiting down the way. I love it. I can't wait to see this Quincy team get some of these, challenges. And I hope that they are able to get the job done and keep moving on, because it's going to be a ton
Yeah.
of fun to talk about.
Looking at just preliminary, looking at Wheaton North, I think they can get scored on. So that could really, really pay into, and they don't score a ton of points, not when they play against really good competition. So, yeah, I get more excited to look into this game even more because they on paper, Quincy looks like the better team.
Yep. All right. Anything else, Mitch? I think we've ran it all down. I think this is
I don't know. Let's just jump to 8A. Let's just see
all
what's
right.
going on
Let's
here.
do it.
The top seed, Loyola Academy, they won 45 to 9 over Plainfield North. Let's see if I know anybody else. Ignatius, they were a 24 seed. They beat Joliet West 39 to 6. Ignatius has got some really good players on that team. York is the 5 seed. There's been a lot of interest in that team this year. They win. Lincoln Way East, 56 to nothing over Taft. They'll play Manuka. That should be a good game. You've got Maine South. They beat Lockport 35 to nothing. Bellevue East beat Aurora East 70 to nothing. So yeah, again, you get up this high. I don't have any idea. Loyola Academy's good. That's all I know.
If there are people listening to this podcast because they are desperate for 8A information,
Go
I mean,
somewhere else.
I was gonna say there's Edgy Tim or there's the Seuss, and they got you covered there.
Yeah,
Somebody's talking about it.
yeah. Hopefully you got that message when we started talking about 6A, and you're not listening anymore. But yeah, go find Edgy Tim. He's got what you need.
We're never gonna tell you to not listen to the show, but
Maybe you should reach out to Edgy Tim and get some Wheaton North dirt. Maybe we should find out what they're all about. He might
uh,
know.
we should reach out and get some info and go from there. But all right, we will have that info come Tuesday morning when the next podcast is out. So to anyone listening to this, get into your podcast feed and be ready to download that one. This was the instant reacts to round 1. We'll have all of round 2 previewed coming up on that Tuesday podcast. So it's going to be great, Mitch. We're getting right into the thick of the playoffs here. And,
Yeah.
it's going to start paring down. But as it pares down, the matchups get that much better. So we've seen some good ones. We're going to see some better ones down the way. I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, it was a great day, right? It was great to see playoff action back. We had great weather and Saturday afternoon football, so it hit you all in the feels, right? You were there in person, you got to see it. So this is our favorite time of the year. We got great teams moving on. We got great matchups here to look forward to in round 2. And looking forward to tying a bow on this week and starting to look ahead to our matchups. And we'll have all that here next week.
Yes, thank you to everyone who listens. This was the instant reacts for round 1. We'll be getting into round 2, diving into the matchups come Tuesday morning. We'll talk soon with the next wave of playoff matchups.